Now.
Well, thanks. And welcome everyone to our February SLUG meeting. Happy that you're able to join us. Before we get started on anything, is anyone from UGIC on the UGIC board here that wants to give an update or announcement or talk about the upcoming conference?
I'm on the UGIC board. I was staying silent here for a second to see if any other folks were on that might have a better update than me. But just happy to give the basic details that it's in Vernal. It's in May. I think it's right after Mother's Day. Registration is open right now. And I think you can check out the agenda. The pre-conference stuff is also out there on the website. And yeah, the rest you could probably find out there.
Cool. Thanks, Greg. That was easy and quick and a perfect segue to what we're going into next. And this is Greg with UGRC, and I'll just let you take it away from here.
Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see. I think I just confused myself. You're seeing my slides though, right?
Yes, I see your slides.
Perfect. All righty then. So yeah, I kind of have a little bit of an obsession with newspapers. I've always kind of had one around growing up and still try to keep a newspaper out there to this day. So I like to fumble through them, stumble on things, and I don't know, I just like having one laying around. So anyway, in that spirit, it was a few months ago, I was at Harmon's here in the Valley looking to pick up a newspaper, I'm talking about a printed paper at this point, and looking to pick up a printed paper. And so I grab it from the section in Harmon's, I take it up to the cash register. And as I'm checking out, I'm gonna guess possibly high schooler, or maybe a little bit older than high schooler, takes the paper, bypasses the scanner, and puts it in my bag. So I'm thinking I'd love to get this free newspaper, but I can't take that route. So I say, oh, actually, I think that one's, you need to charge me for that one. So she pulls it back out and kind of looks at it. It's kind of scanning around and eventually says, oh yeah, you're right. This does cost money. Scans it, puts it back in the bag, and then looks at me again and says, you know, you can read these online for free, right? So I just thought that was hilarious. I think it really dated the both of us, like put her in a box and put me in a box. So in the spirit of free online newspapers, today we're going to go through the UGRC Times. And as promised in the heading of this talk in the emails, there's going to be acronyms. And if nothing else, you know, maybe you learn an acronym here today. So let's start it out with an acronym right out of the gate. This is UGRC going to give a presentation about GIS to SLUG. I think we got 3 right there. So this is probably not the newest information, but I think it's worth just continuing to put it out there. So we got a new name, we got a new logo, and we have a new location. Well, some of you probably are familiar with seeing us up behind the state capitol building. That building, I believe, is coming down in the next couple of months, if not a month or so from now. The legislature has some plans on that. So we have been moved out to Taylorsville, and you're seeing a photo on the right-hand side of the screen. This is the former American Express building, which sits by some Department of Health stuff, the laboratory, and then further down is UDOT. So that's where we are, and a lot of state agencies got moved there from the state office building and other locations. The official address is here. If you go to visit us, you probably won't find anyone in the building. We are in the penthouse suite. We're still more or less working from home, but there's oceans of parking in front of the building that you can find probably an ample amount of. So that's the location. You're seeing the new name and you're seeing the new logo. The URL for our website is the same. We're hoping, and then, you know, in Twitter, somebody was smart enough earlier on when they were setting this up to keep it very generic. The URL was generic, and our map Utah for Twitter is very generic. You'll find AGRC floating around in some places such as GitHub. It's still GitHub/AGRC. So let's jump into some aerial photography updates. So all the stuff that was acquired for basically all the 2021 aerial photography acquisitions are complete. at the moment. We're still working on getting them as services available. So we had a contract with Hexagon as the company, and we believe it's the same company who is flying NAPE in Utah, which, let's go with the acronym here, the National Agriculture Imagery Program. They're flying, this is leaf on imagery. They're flying at 60 centimeters, and this is basically a free service through the USDA. And then we are paying Hexagon further through a 3-year contract, which ends this year, to get additional resolution, higher resolution. That's for our licensed users, and that is 15 centimeters. If you need a review on who licensed users are, that third link down there, the third link kind of goes over who licensed users are, but basically state agencies, schools, things like that. So this year was challenging, obviously. As you know, we get the pandemic, there were the smoke and fires. So kind of more or less the message is we're working on getting them as services. They should be coming pretty soon, but hang tight. For NAPE right now, if you really want to download it, you can do that from our website. And there's a few links there at the bottom where you can get more information on that. This is another exciting one. I'm not sure if you've seen yet. So we have a new API desktop client. So really what this is it's a geocoder, but a geocoder made super easy for GIS and non-GIS folks alike. So this really kills 2 birds with 1 stone, because it allows you a very user interface, and you're seeing the interface right here on the left. And it's cross-platform. You download it, you install it. It can run on Windows, Mac OS, the tongue twister. You don't need a license for it. The other really cool thing is that it has automatic updates on the back end. So you're not worrying about updating the software. It's going to take care of that for you. Once you load it and get your key, it's more or less plug and play. You take a CSV file, and as long as you've got it formatted with, a typical street type terminology and you're seeing the screenshot there on the left, the house number, pre-direction, street name, and street type, you're pretty much good to go. You drop it in that area there, and then it churns pretty quickly. So what it does is it runs on our geocoding API, which we still have available for folks, but it tends to be a little more for the code savvier folks out there. This kind of removes that barrier. It's running through the same geocoding API, but it's spitting out for you a nice CSV that you're seeing a screenshot there. So you get the XY location of it, the match score, and then the address that it found it on. I would highly recommend, if you're interested in this, start out with that top link. And I'm going to make these slides available at the end of the presentation, but that top link there is a great overview of how to get going with it. And then there's the GitHub site if you're looking to get deeper into the code and see where we're going with some enhancements. In the roadmap, one of the enhancements that we are looking to do is add the addition of, you will be able to basically say, I want to geocode also. I want to get the addresses, but I also want to know what district this is based on some SGID districts and boundaries we'll have. You could pick an SGID boundary and say, also report out where did that address fall in which boundaries here. So that's something coming soon. Another thing, just a quick, more or less mention of it here, is something that we're working on called Masquerade. Again, it's back to geocoding, but again, it's taking the complexity out of geocoding. So what this is it's basically a masquerade. It's hitting again the API, the geocode API client on the back end that we have available right now, but you're able to hit it through ArcGIS Pro or ArcGIS Online. And you can you add it as one of your official geocoders, and you're off to the races. So you're saving credits there, and you're using the UGRC geocoder. So keep an eye out for that. We'll have more information on that soon. So let me go back here. 2020 LiDAR, another acronym, light detection and ranging. So all the 2020 projects are finalized and available with the exception of the 2020 FEMA headquarters project. That project is the one in purple there, if color's coming through here. And then the green are the 2020 projects. It's just more of a quick mention that that's coming out. The FEMA one should be done in June of this year. And yeah, we're getting closer to piece together the state here. You can learn more about that data on our data page under the elevation and terrain category. And then you can learn about some of the 2020 acquisition there at that bottom link. State Geographic Information Data Source, SGID. We're trying to transition into using data source. Traditionally this was the database, but as we move forward, with GIS technology, it doesn't make sense so much now to store everyone's data within our database. In the past, that was a thing we needed to do, and then we can serve out the SGID. At this point, technology is increased and enhanced and evolved enough where the great thing is that we can be somewhat of a pointer to the data that's out there, to your data. So if you host it, in ArcGIS Online or something like that, it's a statewide data set. We can point it back to your data. It can stay in place. And as folks come to the SGID, they can type in something, find it, and actually it's your data being hosted by you. So that's kind of really a new cool thing that we're pushing a lot of the data sets that are in the SGID to be hosted by the folks who are actually the stewards of them. Of course, we are the stewards of quite a few ourselves, and we'll continue to keep those in the database. And for folks who can't host them, we also will bring them into the database and host things in there. So the SGID turned 30 years old in 2021, which is kind of a big feat. If you want to read more about the history of that, there's a link at the bottom here. The other kind of thing that's not new, but worth kind of mentioning again is we kind of have two flavors of the SGID rolling, the same data, but you can get it in two types, two different scenarios. So if you want it as a database, you can connect to our Postgres SQL PostGIS database, and there's information in the links below how to do that. Or if you want to more get services or continue to download the file geodatabases and stuff like that, we're using the Esri hub technology to serve all of that data out. Again, you're going to find data in both sides. And again, this is just chiming in on the sharing and contributing. There's a link down here on how to share and contribute to that. Worth mentioning too is if it's not a full-on statewide data set, we are also looking to share that stuff out throughout the state. Maybe it doesn't go into the SGID, maybe it goes into the SGID index. So this is a spot on the data page where you can search a variety of data sets. Our current thinking is that anything could really fall. If it's within data within the state of Utah and folks care about it, it can go into the index and folks can just search it. And then maybe it just says, you can get this data over here, similar to how Google, a Google search engine. We might not host it in the open data or the open SGID sites, but at least we'll get folks lined up, and it's a single point of contact to start searching for data. Another kind of just quick mention here, but a project that I'm super excited about is Eric Neiman in the office. He is working with some collaboration toward OpenStreetMaps on a project where really it takes place names, it takes the places that are in OpenStreetMaps that everyone is contributing to, and it basically does some QA, QC, and some cleansing, and it brings them into the SGID as a service. But really, where this data gets edited and contributed to is back at OpenStreetMaps. So the beauty here is that anybody can go in and enhance these data sets, which we'll possibly use for 911 and other situations. But the great thing is that it's helping. It's really a collaboration between the two of us where we're helping clean up their data, but we're also getting the use of all this great data. So if we work together on this one, I think this could be kind of an interesting model and template to see where it goes. So keep an eye out for that. There will be a blog post and stuff following, probably in the next few months. Next generation 911. This is something that we have been really working on at UGRC for quite some time. So a good portion of our office is funded through 911 funding. So we've gone through E911. Now we're moving into Next Gen 911, another acronym here, NG911. So a quick kind of just overview, keeping it just informative for folks to know how this works. is more or less in the next Gen 911 world, GIS data is the backbone to the entire system. And UGRC and UCA, the Utah Communications Authority, has basically, we work together to work in the world of 911. And so there was a contract that was awarded to Motorola that basically handles the call routing part of 911. I'll talk about that for a second in a minute. And then what happens at the dispatch side in 911. So we're working with Motorola right now, and we're getting really close, if not within the next coming weeks, to start implementing next Gen 911 to route calls spatially. This has been a long time coming for us. I think we're kind of almost exhausted on it, but I think the good news to report here is that all the data that we aggregate and we bring together, is getting used in these bigger systems. So what happens here is you make really the system relies on these PSAP boundaries, public service answering points, or really dispatch boundaries in the state. There's about 30 of them in the state. And what happens is, in the old days, you make a call and there's a whole tabular system and selective routing. Now, with Next Gen 911, we have these PSAP polygon boundaries that we maintain. We work with the PSAPs, the individual PSAPs throughout the state, to verify, where exactly is a call coming in. If a call's coming from here, what PSAP boundary does that come in? So basically, if you make a landline call in a next gen system, it's going to go in and it's going to it knows where that phone number is associated with, based on the telecommunicator knows that. And then basically that gets geocoded with the data and says, oh, it falls within this PSAP boundary, send it to this PSAP. Likewise, if you're on a cell phone, it knows basically the XY coordinates through the tower, and it can figure out that basically and say, okay, well, where does this fall? And then it sends it to that particular dispatch center. As it arrives at the dispatch center, the next piece of the puzzle is that the same data that's being used to get the call there then is the data that's presented on the map. So these are the dispatch maps these aren't the dispatch maps, but these are the maps that the call lands on when it lands at the PSAP. And it's going to see the same SGID data and UGRC base map. So this is pretty big news that the PSAP maps are pretty much implemented throughout the state or getting close. And then call routing, if you make a call, like I said, probably within the next couple of weeks or so, it's going to be going through this GIS data. You can read a lot more about this in the links here, but I probably said enough on that. New political districts are out there in the SGID. Real quick, what they are the US legislative, congressional, and then the Utah State House and Senate and school board districts. So these are districts that will be used for the upcoming 2022 election. Starting in November, these districts will be used to place new representatives in these districts, these districts will then become implemented in 2023 as the new folks who ran and won get positioned into them. They're out there for use. The existing ones from the last session, so these come around every 10 years through the census, and then the census is by law required to provide this PL 94171 summary file. And more or less, this is how the folks at the Independent Redistricting Commission and the redistricting folks at the state legislature, this is how they piece together these new districts through these census summary files. So the cool thing is they released those, and those were released months ago. And there's a blog post on that here. You can grab a link. But the cool thing is there's a lot of demographic data in these summary files that you can use and tie it back to the 2020 census blocks, block groups, tracts, counties, etc. So you can get some good data going on there. That data then was used to create these. If you probably follow some of the mess there throughout the state, those were used to create these 5 different districts. Those are available. Those districts then are used at the county level to update the precincts. So the counties are have been shuffling here for the past couple of months or month or so to basically utilize those districts to recreate their voting precincts within the county. You can't cross over these, the legislative, congressional, and these districts. So there's rules that are in play there. So point being is that there's also new voting precincts that are out there, and I believe those are as fresh as maybe a week or two. So a lot of new political data out there to explore. And again, links here at the bottom. The GMA, another acronym. So NISGIC, National States Geographic Information Council, is a group or a council of state GIS folks from around, basically state GIS offices get together, shops, and discuss, how to better state government with the application of GIS and the use of GIS. So one of the things they do every 2 years is called the Geospatial Maturity Assessment. And this just got released a few weeks, maybe a month or so ago. And each state who can basically partakes in this thing, and I think it was 48 states this past time. So basically most all states are participating. Go through a series of questions, and in UGRC we kind of went through all these questions, and then they give us a report card to kind of see how we're doing. I think you could take it with a grain of salt. I don't think it's a full-on measure of again, I think I'll just leave it as, you could take this with a grain of salt. However, I think some of the highlights that are worth mentioning, overall, we got a grade B, which is above average. We got an A in coordination. So that speaks a lot, I think, to the folks at UGRC and the stewards all working together throughout the state to kind of build out these data sets, such as where we've got A's as well. So the address points, the cadastre data sets, transportation, and then governmental units for like annexations, just boundary data that are through the census BAS, basically the annexation survey, the boundary annexation survey for the census. So kind of worth just noting and checking out. And there's a link there if you want to look more closely at the assessment. And then the last slide here in the newspaper today is just to stay connected, and just as a reminder to, if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, it's pretty darn simple. You just go to gis.utah.gov, scroll to the bottom of the page, and you will see a subscribe button there. And then Twitter, our handle is still the same, @MapUtah. And then if you haven't seen yet or listened to, we've got a podcast that's new-ish, probably less than a year old, but we're working on getting a new episode out. But previous episodes have centered around health, the pandemic, public lands, natural resources, and land surveying, and why it's important throughout the state with the PLSS and things like that. So worth a listen if you're bored. We try to keep it to about 25 minutes. People are busy, and I personally, if podcasts get a little longer than that, I tend to look over them. So that is the news from Wobegon. And I can check if there's any questions. In the chat.
The only one I see is, I know you said the imagery will be available as soon as possible, but do you have a really rough estimate in number of months?
I don't want to speak too soon, but I don't feel like months. The best person to reach out is Rick Kelson. If Adrian, if you want, I could follow up, or if you know Rick Kelson, he's going to have the exact information on that. Just in talking with him, I'm not thinking months is where we're at. But again, I would definitely reach out to Rick Kelson. And let me know if you don't have his email, or let me know in the chat here if you want me to reach out to him and connect you two.
Yeah, that sounds good. I can reach out to Rick.
Oh, okay. Oh, yep.
So here's another one. What should a city GIS staff be doing to coordinate with you on NG911?
The city staff, I believe, is doing all the right stuff at this point. I think, so for Next Gen 911, and I could talk about this probably for too long, but really it's the PSAP boundaries, and we work with the PSAP. So that's like one of the required. There's a data model out there that NENA, the National Emergency Number Association, kind of puts out. And the data model, there's a variety of data sets in there that we'd like to have, such as railroads and mile markers, and we do have most of these data sets, surprisingly, in the state. But the ones where we really bubble up from cities particularly is address points, road center lines, parcels. That's a county assessor thing, but really, a lot of the data that you folks are doing at the city level is bubbling up through the county and getting to us. So really in short, I think we're in pretty good shape there. And, I hear from a lot of states, they're still working on building a lot of this stuff. So we're in pretty good shape there. I think it's a great question. Thanks for asking it. I don't have a specific answer off the top of my head, other than just continuing to do the awesome work at the local level with address points and road center lines and data sets like that. And then I guess I would add that, now that I'm thinking more about it, I think probably the biggest critical piece to that is then what happens is we take that data and we aggregate it together, and then we form these data sets. We do some in-house QA, QC, and standardizing of things. That data then gets pushed into Motorola's system, and there's some QA, QC checks that happen there. Certain data sets fall out, like duplicate addresses is probably one of our biggest issues. So what happens is those get rejected, and there could be danger there, obviously, because if there's one address here and then there's another duplicate address in a different PSAP, we suddenly have an issue of where that call is going to get routed to. It'll eventually get routed back to the right one, but we're talking about seconds or whatnot to get, and that could be a lot of time in a 911 call. So really, some of the best things that could happen, we're going to start sending feedback back down to the stewards that says this data, got flagged in this way in the system. But getting that stuff cleaned up is probably the greatest thing, be the biggest of help. And particularly, like I said, with address points, I think the biggest thing at this point are duplicates. So if you have duplicates in your address points, and we have a list of all this stuff and we can work with you, but that would be key, removing those. Well, you can always reach out to any of us here at UGRC or myself, and I will drop the slides here. You need to click that one. I will drop a link to the slides in the chat. And then I think Christina is going to make them available too in a follow-up email.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. That was great. And we appreciate everything that UGRC does, and I'm sure everyone here uses the data that y'all author. And yeah, so just a reminder, we are recording this meeting, and we will send out these links and other info later on. But like Greg said, stay in touch and sign up on the newsletter. It's really helpful, and it gets you all the information you need. But next up, Zlatko has a humor segment for us.
Let me pull it up here.
This is our daughter, Lily. She's
Can you all hear the sound?
Yep.
Okay.
almost 2 years old, and she wants to show you how she's really good with the map. Hey, Lily.
Okay.
Hey, Lily, where is Brazil? Oh, yeah, there it is. Where's the USA? There it is. Where is Russia?
Russia.
Where's Russia?
Russia. Yep, where's Russia?
There it is. Where is Australia? Yay, Lily. Where's Australia? There it is. Where is South Africa? There it is. Yay, Lily. Where is Mexico?
Mexico.
Where's Mexico?
Mexico.
Good job. Where is it?
Very good. Where's Canada?
Canada.
Yeah.
Canada.
Where's Greenland?
Yay.
Where's Greenland? There it is. Yay, Lily. Where's Argentina?
Where is it? Where's Argentina? Argentina. Uh-huh.
Very good.
Yay, Lily.
Where's New Zealand? Very good. Where is India?
India, where is it?
Good
job.
girl. Where is Japan?
Hey, where's Japan?
Are you jumping?
Okay, Lily, good job. Where's Japan?
Very good. Where's China?
China, good job.
Yay, Lily. Where is Saudi Arabia? Yay, Lily.
Yeah.
Where's Zimbabwe?
Zimbabwe, where's Zimbabwe?
Good girl.
Yay.
Where's Spain?
Spain, where's Spain?
There it is. Where is Paraguay? Where's Paraguay?
Where's Paraguay?
Jump.
Jim,
It's over by Ecuador.
where's Paraguay?
Where's Paraguay? Oh, that's Ecuador. Very good.
Where's Paraguay?
That's right, Paraguay.
Where is it? Okay, where's Fiji? Fiji.
Where's Fiji?
You're pointing with your pinky. Oh,
There it
Fiji.
is.
Where's
Good girl.
South Korea?
Ooh, where's South Korea, Lily? How about Taiwan?
Where's Uncle Brady in Taiwan?
Are you all done?
Set up.
Yeah.
More?
Where's Taiwan?
Yay, Lily.
Yeah, where's South Korea?
Oh, good girl. We haven't done that one forever.
Where's Turkey? Yay!
Yay, Lily. Where's Turkey?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh, good girl. Where are the Philippines?
Philippines.
Where's Sri Lanka?
Yay!
Where's Sri Lanka? Sri Lanka?
Where's Sri Lanka?
There it is.
Good job.
Where is Mongolia? Where's Mongolia? There it is. Did we do China already?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, how about Chile? Where's Chile? Yep, right there. How about Panama?
Where's
Panama.
Yay!
Good girl.
Where's Greece? Yay! Good job. Where's Greece?
Where's Greece?
There it is.
Where's Turkmenistan?
Uh-huh.
There it is. Good girl. Where is the UK? Or United Kingdom?
Good
girl.
job.
Where's Iceland? There it is.
Where's Sweden?
How about Ireland?
Where's Madagascar? Good job.
That's right.
That's right.
Where's...
Madagascar?
Oh, where's Madagascar?
Whoa.
Boom.
Let's do some more.
Do you know any more?
Whoa, good job.
Where's Madagascar?
Yay, Lily.
There it is. How about the Ivory Coast? There it is. Where's Ghana? Right there.
Where's Antarctica? Down there.
Where's Malaysia? Good girl.
Where's Tasmania?
Yay, Lily. Where is Bolivia?
Yay.
Where's Bolivia? All right, where's Colombia?
Yay.
There it is. Good girl. Where's the Czech Republic? Good. Where is Italy? Italy. Where's Egypt? Egypt.
That's right.
Where's the Congo?
Yay!
Hey, Lily, where's the Congo? There it is.
Where's France? Okay.
You
that's
okay?
right.
Where's France?
Where's France?
Good. Oh, where'd it go?
Where's France?
There it is. Where's Portugal?
Yay!
Good. Where is Norway?
No way.
Where's Norway? We haven't done this one in a while.
No way.
Where's Norway?
And no way.
Norway, where is it? Where's Norway? Where's Norway go? Where is it on the map?
Don't know.
Where's Norway?
Where's Indonesia?
Good job.
Yay, Lily. Wow.
Let's see, what other one? Where is?
I think we've got a lot of them.
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
Can you say bye-bye?
No.
More?
Okay. Where is Djibouti? Remember that one?
Did we do Djibouti?
Haley talked to you.
Oh.
Lily, where's Djibouti?
Oh, we did Germany.
Oh, where's Germany? Where's Germany?
Good. Did we ask her about Greece already?
Yes.
Okay.
Um,
Yay, Lily.
good job.
Say bye-bye.
And more.
More.
Where is?
The third grade World
Hope
Geography.
you enjoyed that. Maybe a future geographer there. So. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Psycho. That was cool. Yeah, I agree with Bruce. She knows more than most people do in America. Yeah, more than 95% for sure. And okay, so our next presenter is Joe Peters with Esri. He is going to talk to us about ArcGIS field maps and some field operations. And Joe, I'll just let you take it away. And just a reminder, you can write questions into the chat box and we'll check it periodically.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you. Can you let me know when my stop time is, roughly?
We have a good amount of time left. This meeting is scheduled to 1 o'clock, but
Okay.
We're on track to finish early.
Okay, cool. I'll try to keep it short and concise. But yeah, thank you guys for having me. For those of you I haven't met, I recognize a bunch of names in the participant window, but my name is Joe Peters. I'm a solution engineer with Esri. I work out of our Denver regional office. I've been with Esri, I think, about 6 years. And actually, my first 3 years, I was working primarily in Utah with local government accounts, so all the cities and counties in Utah. I did get moved off after some shuffling of the way that we're assigned to our customers. I started working more in Arizona, but kind of looking to be back in Utah moving forward, and I'm really excited about that. I've always really enjoyed working with the community there, so thank you for having me today. And today I was going to just talk about ArcGIS field maps, and I'll go ahead and at this point start sharing my screen. And can you let me know if you can see my screen okay?
I see it.
Okay, cool. And I might stop my video. And yeah, so I just wanted to talk about ArcGIS field maps. Zlatko approached us about doing a little presentation today. I've been doing a lot with ArcGIS field maps, helping a lot of my customers with some of the more advanced things with it. So connecting to ArcGIS enterprise data in particular has been a big thing. And working with data in ArcGIS Online that's maybe coming from ArcGIS Enterprise has been a really hot topic with us. So I thought I would just give a consolidated presentation of what I presented to a customer last week. So I'm going to try and kind of lightning talk this. The way I'm looking at this, I'm going to be kind of moving between a bunch of different applications. I've got a slide deck and a couple of mobile screens I'm going to try to share. So if only one thing goes wrong, I'm going to consider that a win today. But my goal today is just to kind of get across what ArcGIS field maps is, some common ways that folks are leveraging it, and some of the more, towards the end of the presentation, some of the more advanced workflows that I think will be of interest to, I know for sure cities and counties, probably some state agencies, and really anyone that has field activities to conduct that is using some of our technology for data management. I think there's some really nice things that we can do with field maps to ensure that the data that is being collected is of high quality as it goes into the system. So that's my goal for today. Hopefully we will get there. So the first thing I want to do is really just kind of set the stage for what ArcGIS Field Maps is. So Esri has been supporting, I think ArcGIS Collector was the first mobile application that we really introduced. So these are applications that can be installed from the app stores that we commonly see on mobile devices. So if you have an Android device or an iOS device, these are applications that we can go into those mobile app stores and actually just download to our device. And then if we log in using credentials either from ArcGIS Enterprise or ArcGIS Online, we have access to do the kinds of things that these apps are designed for. So Collector was probably our first foray into this, and I think that was around 2014. And at the time, when we first started building these mobile apps, there was a trend in the industry to have different applications for different areas of focus. So we built Collector primarily for, it's a map-focused editing tool in the field. And then we came out with other apps like ArcGIS Explorer, which is like if we just wanted view-only access to a map in the field. And we continued to build on kind of some specialized applications like Workforce for actually assigning work to people and pointing them to a location to go and actually do work. And then maybe we want to navigate people to that location, and so we built Navigator, and other applications have come along as well. So Tracker is one for actually tracking where people are going in the field so that maybe we can understand the movement of our employees. Maybe we're wanting to understand where a public works group is actually going to do their work to make sure that we're kind of spreading it out across the area that we're tasked with supporting. So we have all these different apps that came into our system for like the first 5 or so years that we started developing these mobile apps. And in principle, this was a good idea, but I think that the feedback I definitely heard from our user base, and then I think the development team did as well, was, man, this is an awful lot of apps, and we're asking, public works departments, sometimes folks that have other jobs in the field to do. Maybe they're not the most tech savvy group, or they're just, not the best at logging into all these different systems. And why are we asking them to do that? And so that's really where the development of ArcGIS Field Maps came into play, as we kind of looked at building the next generation mobile app. The development team said, hey, you know what? Let's simplify this for our end users. We're hearing this feedback loud and clear that we really need to have one application that can do many of these things and do it well. So this is ArcGIS Field Maps. That's where it kind of came into the picture for us. And it is attempting to do many of these things, make good use of the real estate that we have on these mobile devices, which is sometimes limited. So there's been a lot of thought put into the user interface of this application and the way that we can actually enable all these different things. So what was at one point many applications is now being rolled into one application that has the ability to do all of these things. We're doing this slowly over time. So at its first release, which happened about 1.5 years ago, it didn't have all the capabilities that all these other individual apps did, but we're slowly kind of integrating in a thoughtful way so that the interface isn't too crowded and we can do all these things in an intuitive way. So, the first thing is the ability to just view a map, the ability to edit a map. Those kind of the capabilities of Explorer and Collector are in there. The ability to track, which was the Tracker application, is in there now as well. And we're working on getting the capabilities of Workforce as well as Navigator into this one application. And so, well, I did say that these applications are all rolling into one. I want to walk that back a tiny little bit. We do have still a handful of focused applications that won't be going anywhere. Folks that do use our technology and our mobile apps in particular might be familiar with ArcGIS Survey 123 or ArcGIS Quick Capture. These are very specialized applications. Survey 123 is very form-centric, so it's a really good way to replace paper workflows with digital workflows to ensure data quality as information is being entered in the field, but it's very form-centric. So if we have very long forms that were maybe previously PDF documents or just kind of things that people were filling out by hand, that's where Survey 123 fits in. Quick Capture is a big button, just kind of push a button as you're going by an asset, just quickly get it onto a map. Lots of good use cases for that. So those apps aren't going anywhere, but Field Maps is really, I would say, kind of the flagship mobile application for a map-centric user experience within our system. And so the key capabilities are just viewing maps, being able to do markup. So maybe we've got someone in the field that just wants to easily share, just put a circle around an asset or something like that and send it to the powers that be so that they can maybe make updates or be aware of something that is going on out in the field. It's also very good at data collection. So that includes just adding features to the map, maybe updating attributes, but also inspections or performing maintenance. And the way that that plays out for GIS users is that we can have related tables connected to a feature or asset. And then we can add related tables so that we have that one-to-many relationship that's being honored within field maps so that we can track these inspections as well as view them in the field and add new ones if we need to. And then we also have this somewhat unique capability within our system, which is the location tracking, which is enabled through the tracker application, which is an add-on license, but there are use cases where that can be very important to folks. I know for things like emergency management, understanding where people are, if we're going out and doing something like conducting a missing person search, and we just want to be able to easily understand where people have actually been to search and where they haven't been, that's where location tracking can be really valuable. So I mentioned that we have this strategy of implementing the different capabilities of these individual apps into ArcGIS field maps. And so right now, as of its initial release, and we're probably about like 10 releases in at this point because new capabilities come in every quarter. But we've got the Explorer application, so a view-only access. We've got Collector, we've got Tracker, and then we're moving towards getting the workforce capabilities as well as Navigator. And the one thing I'll say about this, I think that our development team is doing a really good job, just from my observation of making things intuitive, not kind of rushing the design of this, so that it is an intuitive user experience for the end users. And I think that's really important. And that's why we're not rushing to just get all these things in there to say we've checked that box, but to actually do it properly. So, the advantages here, and I've already kind of gone over this: one app to deploy and learn, sign into ArcGIS only once. And, we can enable enterprise logins with this. So if you're really serious about your mobile workflow and you want your end users to have as easy of an experience as possible, if you enable those enterprise logins where we're actually hitting our Active Directory accounts, they're logging in just using that same set of credentials that they log into maybe a laptop or other devices within your organization. And that makes for just a much more seamless experience, less needing to reset passwords, understand like, I don't remember my username, those kinds of things go away when we enable those enterprise logins. And that's what we at Esri kind of have set up for all of our demo environments. And it is, firsthand, I will say it is a very nice user experience. So we're also eliminating offline content duplication. So when we did have maybe a view-only map in Explorer and then a collector map for editing, we actually had to download offline content twice, which is not a good thing to have to do, especially if we're working with a really large area and maybe some large mobile packages or tile packages. This elimination of duplication of offline content is pretty big. And then just more consistency. So, it's a similar look and feel that we can get used to. So key capabilities, I'll just run through this real quick. Map viewing, the ability to mark up, high accuracy data collection is supported. I'm not going to go too much into that today. I'm really going to talk more about the software, but hardware wise, everything is there if you want to connect to high accuracy GPS devices. I know a lot of vendors of GPS devices are really well versed in this and definitely know a lot more about it than I do. But everything is there and ready to handle high accuracy devices. So whether we're talking about, going down to like sub-meter or even like getting down to like centimeter grade, everything is there for ArcGIS field maps to just plug into that external device and be able to override essentially the location, the default location of your mobile device, and override it with that high accuracy GPS device. There's also the ability to have these smart forms, which is, I think, a huge differentiator between what we had with Collector for ArcGIS And what we now have with field maps is the ability to have some smart forms in there. And what I mean by smart forms is things like conditional visibility. Like I answered this to this question above, and that had an effect of not showing additional questions below it, like a different additional attribute values that had nothing to do. Like, since I said no to that, why would I ask questions about that specific, additional questions about that specific thing? So we can hide things, we can group, we can require specific fields. And one thing I'll say about just the roadmap of this product is that this smart form capability is only going to grow. I would say we're kind of really in the initial phases of having smart forms in field maps, and we're just going to continue to see that get better. So one of the things that, if I have time, I'll talk about towards the end is what the roadmap actually looks like. And the next big thing that's going to come out in the March release is the ability to calculate fields. So I've entered a couple of values in some fields, and I want to calculate another field based on those values that I've input. So the ability to do that is, I think, pretty exciting for a lot of our users, and I'm excited for it too. So that's a great thing that's on the horizon. And then the other thing is just being able to view and record and share location tracks. And I've mentioned this a little bit before. And there is, if you're one of those techie people and you have an Apple Watch that's connected to your device, you can actually enable this on your phone to turn tracking on and off. And then another differentiator, I guess I would call it, between field maps and collector, which I kind of consider the predecessor of field maps, is that there's now a web app that comes along with this. And so whether you're an ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise, when you configure a map, so you create a web map, you add your layers to it in either ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise, there's actually now this web app associated with field maps where we can go in and further configure what the end user experience for that particular map looks like in the field maps mobile application. So I'd say the big things here are, number one, we can configure offline maps. So if we have need for an offline experience for editing or viewing maps in the field, this is where we can ensure that all the layers that are in there are actually enabled for offline access, because there are some considerations that we have with the data itself. And then we can actually create offline areas within this web app if we would like to simplify that experience for end users, so that they can just go in, select the area that they want, and download it to the device. And then the other thing is, this is where we actually configure those smart forms that I mentioned. So those are kind of the big capabilities of field maps. So that was kind of a lot of presenting. I'm going to kind of get into showing some of the capabilities, kind of demoing more, but does anyone have any questions at this point or comments before I move into that?
There's one in the chat. Do you have to have an ArcGIS Online login in order to collect data on field maps, and is it a specific type of user?
Okay, that's a good question. So you either have to have, well, I think you can technically get into ArcGIS field maps without a ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise login. But if you want to be able to secure your data, your organization's data, and then be able to have specific end users edit that data in the field, it does require an ArcGIS Online or an ArcGIS Enterprise login. And that's part of that is just securing the data, but part of it is also understanding who is updating what and when. So there's fields within the data that will capture who edited it, who updated it, and when they did so. And then as far as like the licensing levels, the type of user, there's, if you have a creator license, or there's, I think, a field worker license, those are the ones that you're going to require. So anything that allows you to essentially edit the data through a mobile app will give you access to field maps. So I think without that login, you can still kind of go in there and see publicly available maps. But if you really want to kind of lock it down for the kinds of workflows that I know a lot of folks are doing, that's where the login does come into play. So good question. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And this is going to be, this is an iPad. I feel like I have to point this out. So that video that we just watched, this background is actually a map I made for my daughter before she was born, and it's the first thing I hung in her room. She's about 18 months, so she does not know any of these countries yet, but I hope that she does soon. That was kind of a big thing to me for her to understand her place in this world. So I thought I would mention that. But I want to point out that this is the field maps application is kind of here in the center of the screen. And I'm just going to jump in here. So I want to kind of talk through a variety of different workflows. Hang on, I'm going to jump out of here real quick. So first workflow is I have a web map that's in ArcGIS Online, and I have data that is in ArcGIS Online. So this is data that is hosted and stored in ArcGIS Online, and I just want to be able to edit and update that data through ArcGIS Field Maps. So I'm logged in with an ArcGIS Online named user, and I have a list of the maps that are available to me. I'm going to work first in this top one here, which is this tree field map. And I do want to point something out. So in the web app, we do have the ability to create offline areas for our end users if we want to kind of simplify that offline experience for them. And if we did that, we would come in here and they would tap on this map and they could actually pick from the options of offline areas that we've already kind of like in advance created for them. There is also this ability, if a map has been enabled for offline access, there is the ability for an end user to just come in here and pick an area and just take it offline. So there is that option of like how we go about offline access. There's actually quite a bit to offline access that anyone that's interested in this, I'm happy to talk offline. So if we have really big areas or we've got large imagery data sets, we can actually sideload those base maps or package up all the data and put those on the device kind of separately, kind of load them onto the device, or we can just use this workflow that's built into the apps themselves. So it kind of depends on the approach, and there's a bunch of really good documentation, including a white paper. So anyone that's interested in that, always happy to talk offline. So I'm just going to jump in though to this map here and point out a couple of things. I can close all this stuff out. So this is actually, for anyone that's interested, this is our tree asset management solution. So we have a team within Esri, our ArcGIS solutions team, that builds out workflows around the types of things that we know our user community is interested in doing. So I know a lot of local governments and other agencies do have an inventory of the trees that they're responsible for managing. And this is something that just released recently. There's a whole set of applications that this solution revolves around. But one of them that's a kind of key component of it is the ability to be able to edit and update tree assets in the field. And the one thing I'll say about these solutions, and one of the reasons I'm showing it, is the solutions team within Esri just does a fantastic job of configuring our applications with the best technology that we have, like whatever is like kind of cutting edge for us at any given moment. And everything is just well thought out, like things like pop-ups and the way that we've configured tables and all those kinds of like, components of a workflow to make kind of like a little miniature system to complete work and view work and share that with external people. So if you're interested, I do recommend deploying some of these solutions. It's very easy to do so that you can get an idea of what they've done to configure these things, and you can always reverse engineer them for other workflows or even leverage them for these specific workflows that we're showing. So I'll just come in real quick. I'm going to pick this tree that's in a park down the street from where I live. And I want to point out first, this tree is something I actually added this earlier today, but you'll see that I've got a nice pop-up that is being displayed in field maps. It's showing all this information that is stored in the feature itself. So just stored in the attribute table of the feature. And I'm going to point out a couple of things here that I think are kind of key components of field maps and the way our applications are configured. First off, we're in field maps, but there is this button, a hyperlink essentially, that allows us to connect to other applications within the ArcGIS system. And this could be third-party applications as well. We just have a nice kind of seamless workflow for our application. So one of the things I could do here is maybe I need to request service, and maybe that's a different group that would actually perform that service. Maybe it's going into a work order management system, something of that nature. I can click on this hyperlink. That's actually going to take me into Survey 123. It's going to open it in a web browser. It could just as easily open it in a mobile app, the Survey 123 mobile app. But that's basically just loading up a Survey 123 form where I can quickly enter some information. So if I do want to, maybe say that we need to do some pruning here, canopy reduction, that link that actually sent me into Survey 123 is doing some really cool things behind the scenes. Number one, it's passing some information that is not even exposed in the survey form. So information about the name of the tree and the location. You can see that the location was pushed in here and some other information. And then I can basically submit this. So that's like, if I want to link to other applications, we can use what we call URL parameters to actually link and send information from any given asset into a survey form. So it's a nice workflow and something that Field Map supports very nicely. So I just wanted to point that out. The other thing I'll point out in here is that we've got a couple of related records. So we've got a maintenance table. And I did add this earlier today where we do have a maintenance record that I submitted earlier today. So you can see I completed a pruning and canopy reduction maintenance. I could edit this if I wanted to, or I could add another one if I wanted to. So I could just kind of come in here. Something I'll point out is that, we've got some domains set here that are pretty well thought out. So we can quickly enter that information. The date's going to default to today, which is a nice thing. So we can kind of run through and submit that pretty quickly. Oh, I need to put a finish date. That's another thing we can do is make things required if they are, and then submit that. And then another thing I want to just point out while I'm in here, if I put a point on a map and I say I want to collect here, first off, we're actually getting the address, which I think is pretty cool. So it's by default, if I just push a point on the map, it's actually reverse geocoding and getting the nearest address, which can be useful and is actually something here that, like, if you want to, if that is something that is required in the attribute table when you add a feature, you can actually copy that and then just pop that into the feature when you add it. So if I were to say collect here, you can see that I've got some options. Maybe this is a planted tree. I just want to point out some of these smart form capabilities that we have access to. First off, we've got grouping, which is something unique to field maps when we compare it to collector. And we can kind of minimize, expand these groups. One of the things I liked about this particular example is when we get down to these, like, are tree wires present? Are there tree guards? Is it a heritage tree? Are there overhead utilities? Part of this smart form spec is kind of being a little bit more thoughtful about the way we expose questions to end users. So in this case, it's a yes/no question. So we actually have the option to just say yes, no as a radio button. That's getting stored in the database as yes or no, but it's just making it a little bit more intuitive for the end user to actually enter that in the system. Something else I'll point out, if I wanted to change the status here, so like if I went from planted and I said this was available, you'll see I actually lost a lot of the questions, like all the questions about the type of tree, the genus, the species, all those kinds of things went away. And that's what I meant when I said earlier about the ability of smart forms to understand questions that you're asking and decide whether entire groups or additional questions below it are relevant or not. Anyone that's worked with Survey 123, Survey 123 has had that capability for a long time. If I'm being honest, I feel like I've seen a lot of folks that had really good collector workflows in the past that they were kind of trying to jam into Survey 123 because of the smart form capabilities of Survey 123. Nod your head if that was you, not that I can see it, but what I think is really nice about field maps is we're designing it very thoughtfully to have these smart form capabilities. I don't know if it'll ever catch up to what Survey 123 can do, because Survey 123 is so incredibly powerful, but there's a lot we can do here. And the roadmap is looking really exciting for what we're going to be able to do in the future. The other point I should make about these smart forms is that this is actually being built into the web map specification. So it's not just field maps that is getting this capability. As they build these smart form capabilities into ArcGIS field maps, we're also going to be able to see that across the ArcGIS system, which I think is just incredibly exciting. So we're going to be able to see it in the new map viewer. We're going to be able to see it in Experience Builder. We're going to be able to see it in the edit widget in the JavaScript API. So that means that we're going to have, kind of this same experience in other places in our system. So it's something we can kind of get used to seeing. And one last thing before I get out of this, just want to point out the ability to I've got some bookmarks in here. So I just bookmarked like some of the parks around the area that I live in. So that's kind of nice to be able to supply to end users. And then Markup. So Markup is kind of cool where we can actually maybe put like a square here. If I did a better job, I would actually have the ability to make that more of a geometric rectangle. And then I can actually share this. So I can share my markup if I want to share this with certain people. I can do that. I can share just the image, or I can actually share a link to the map itself. So those share capabilities are pretty nice. All right. The next thing I'm going to show, I'll point out here, you'll see my tracks are on. So that's what is actually tracking what I'm doing, which is pretty cool. The next thing I'm going to show, though, is this public art map. And I think this is completely fascinating, but maybe that's just because I nerd out on this stuff. But this is a web map that is in ArcGIS Online, but the data that we're seeing is actually coming from an enterprise geodatabase. And I published it as a layer to ArcGIS Enterprise. So it's a feature service in ArcGIS Enterprise that references enterprise geodatabase data. But I have synced it through collaboration, which is a new capability as of 2 or 3 years ago in the ArcGIS system. So I've synced it up to ArcGIS Online. So I'm logged into ArcGIS Online. I see essentially a copy of this data in ArcGIS Online that I can provide access through web maps. So I can edit and update. I can view it, or I can edit and update. And I'll show you towards the end of my presentation. I'm going to put a point in a really obvious place. So I'm just going to go into the middle of Stanley Lake here and say collect. And just real quick, just so we can see this later on. Just going to enter a couple of things here, and I'm going to submit this. So you guys can see, oh wait, hang on, let's put the date. Done. So I'm going to submit this, and then I go back out to this map and just make sure. I think we're good. Yeah. So I'm going to sync that, and then we're going to take a look at that a little bit later, how that looks in ArcGIS Pro and actually in my enterprise database, because that is actually going to sync back through a bidirectional sync to my enterprise geodatabase. So that's a really powerful workflow where I've got data sitting in an ArcGIS Enterprise geodatabase that's shared as a service to ArcGIS Enterprise, collaborated up to ArcGIS Online, put into a web map for field users through ArcGIS Online, and is actually syncing back to my enterprise geodatabase. So that is pretty next level, and one of those things that I think a lot of people have maybe wanted for many years. But now we have that capability. So I think that's pretty exciting. All right, I am going to kind of move to the next thing, but I figure I just showed a lot and I'm talking a lot. Does anyone have any questions at this point or comments? Is this useful?
Yes. Okay, Adrian's got a question, and then I have a question. So I'll read you Adrian's. He asked, do you set up the related records table within Field Maps web app, or is it configured somewhere else?
Question. So the way I've always done this is I will start in ArcGIS Pro. If you're still using ArcMap, that's fine too. Concept is the same. We're basically setting up a feature class. We're setting up the related tables on that feature class in ArcGIS Pro. We're sharing that as a service either to ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. And then when we pull that layer into Field Maps, those related tables are there. If you do deploy our solutions, for example, where I literally just click the button in the solutions app that we have in ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise, if you do deploy those solutions, the layers and the maps and the applications, everything is just pre-configured. But if I was starting from scratch with my own data, all that kind of stuff, I would probably start in ArcGIS Pro.
Awesome. So my question is for that smart form that you were doing. You said eventually it's going to be available in, web map or the web viewer and some other things. Right now, if you want to do it, is it in that field map app that's on your computer? Is that where you configure out like the groupings and the conditional answers and those sorts of things?
Yeah, and actually that's the next thing I'm going to jump into. So maybe
sweet.
we just, so we'll just go ahead and take a look at that, I guess.
Sounds good.
So let's do that. Okay, and before I do that, the one thing I want to show is that solution I showed, which is the tree asset management solution. It's a great, well thought out solution that has several different components, but one of the things that it has is a dashboard like we see here. So this is just the example that our solutions team put together, where you can actually see all the assets for anyone that's familiar with some of these examples that we tend to show. This is Naperville, Illinois. That's the common place that we use. But you can see that this is a nice, well thought out dashboard where we can see inspection history, maintenance history, which is coming from those related tables. We've actually got the ability to create an assignment here if we want to. View maintenance, the kinds of maintenance that are coming in, all those kinds of things. I guess my point is here, hey, this is a nice dashboard if you're interested, but also just this workflow of having field applications and then configuring that to have a dashboard or other applications, maybe applications that we're sharing internally or maybe even with the public, is a very common workflow and something that can be a really nice way to kind of track this data that's not just like going into like somebody's desktop and sitting in a database, but actually being shared so that we can be able to understand the, kind of a more full picture. So just want to point that out as something that's kind of cool. Okay, now let's go into that Field Maps web app that I talked about. So this is available in later versions of ArcGIS Enterprise. So if you have 10.9, 10.9.1, you're going to see this Field Maps web app. If you have ArcGIS Online, just any ArcGIS Online, because it updates itself, you can go into, log in, you go into what we call the app launcher up here, these 9 dots, and select from this drop down. You may have noticed over the last several years, we've added a lot of these applications to this app launcher. And one of these newer ones that you'll see here is Field Maps. And this is where we can really do some fun stuff. So first off, I think this is a really nice thing. I used to have this experience with Collector, and I'm sure that other folks who have used Collector in the past, like you'll open up Collector, you'll log in, and you'll just see all these maps, and they're all of your organization's maps, maybe your own maps. And some of them might not have anything to do with a mobile workflow. It's like something that I would never view in a mobile app or edit or anything like that. So what we can do now just in this Field Maps web app is for any of our maps, we can just select it and say, I don't want this to show up in the mobile app, which I think is a really nice thing. So it really kind of decongests the user interface for the end user. So they're not combing through all these different maps in the mobile app. They only see the ones that are specific to be shared within ArcGIS Field Maps.
So that works for everybody, not just you. So if I click it and hide it, nobody can see that in Field Maps.
I am almost positive with that, but yes, I'm pretty sure that's the way it works. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
I'm like 80%. But that's something we could easily test for sure.
Sweet.
Yep. And then I'm going to go into, I'm going to go into this very quickly and just show, this is a map that actually, you'll see, I just want to point out in this map that this is an Arizona land ownership map that I put together, just super basic viewing map where it's got actually a image service that is NAPE Imagery for the state of Arizona, and it's got some public lands data. And you'll see that offline is disabled. So that's one of the nice things about this is like in the past with Collector, you were kind of having to go back and forth and see where layers were causing problems if you were trying to take something offline. We can actually go in here very quickly and see, oh man, there's a couple of items in this particular map that have problems. And I know the problem with these maps is I don't own them and sync isn't enabled. So like, I really can't take this map offline. But I just wanted to point that out, that I can't take it offline and I can see that. And if it is layers that I own and I have access to, it'll actually kind of guide you, give you some tips, and go so far as saying, do you want to enable sync on this layer, et cetera, so that you can actually take it offline. And let's take a look at that same thing in this tree field map app, which is enabled for offline access. So you'll see that if I view my content here, everything checks out, everything looks good. And that means that sync is enabled and like offline access, all those kinds of things that we have to worry about are taken care of. There's very good documentation about this, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But the other thing I'll point out is these map areas. I think this particular map, there's like something with groups that I have to check out, but with other maps, I could go in here and see this manage areas, and I would literally just select the bounding box, and that would be the area that my end users could take offline. And then as far as that, the smart forms, and this is where we're going to start to see more and more of this stuff. This is where these smart forms take place. And one of the options we have is just by default to take whatever is in the pop-up and just convert that into the initial kind of like starting point for a smart form. And you'll see that this is where all of this information is coming in. So for anything I have here, these are my options. I can rename the title if I want to. So if it's got a really cryptic field name, I can make that more legible. I can give it a description. So sometimes this is nice, like enter, just like a little hint, basically. I can decide whether it's required or if null values are allowed. I can decide if it's editable or not. Sometimes we maybe just want to display what's already in the data. And then another thing I'll show here is like the conditional visibility. So this is where we can actually go in and configure whether it is displayed or not. Under the hood, Arcade is being used, but we've built into the most recent release just a very simple expression editor, excuse me. So you can see here that this expression editor is an awful lot like a definition query, where we're saying like, we're only going to show this if the planning space status is not available. So that's kind of how these conditional visibility queries work. They are built under the hood with Arcade. I do think Arcade is coming into our system more and more. So if anyone's interested in learning more about that, there are some good resources. If you want to tag me offline, I could definitely point you to them. But I think the relevance of using these Arcade expressions is becoming more and more. With the calculations that are going to come into the smart forms in March and the March release, they're all going to be configured using Arcade. So that's good to know. I'll point out too, like here's like where I had those radio buttons. You'll see that this is that field. There's it's a string type, and I've got these radio buttons because it's basically, there's two options and I can decide which input type I want. So there's a few different options here. And so that's where you kind of get all that configuration. And then if you want, you can actually just remove, like, let's say I just don't, like, it's still going to be in the attribute table, but maybe in this particular field map, I don't want to have specific fields even show up. I can just delete them, and then they just kind of are removed from the smart form altogether. Even though they remain in the data set, they're not exposed to the end user to enter any information. So things like municipality and district or neighborhood, these are the kinds of things where it's kind of neat, where you can actually just kind of auto-populate these. It's going to, in a few months when the field calculations come in, we'll be able to do that just automatically by having through the smart form. Like, let's say we have a layer that is our municipality boundaries. We can actually have a calculation that will poke into that municipality layer and auto-populate this municipality value. Today, if you're working with an enterprise geodatabase and ArcGIS Enterprise, you can actually already do that with attribute calculations. So just another way to kind of like make that end user experience better while also ensuring better data quality so that nobody's fat fingering municipality or entering it in different ways in different places. So that's the smart form. I'm going to jump back into another mobile app again, but before I do that, I do want to point out the tracks that are getting captured, because I think this is pretty neat. So this is track viewer. So this is what, like when I turn on tracking in field maps, this is an application that we have that just shows all these tracks. So here's me, you know, mostly sitting in my house, crazy amount of tracks around here. But you can see where I've been. You can filter by days and times. And what's kind of neat is these are just a bunch of points, and you can see like the charge on my device, the speed I was going, the direction, accuracy, all those kinds of things. And this app is really just meant to be a nice view of the tracks that are being captured by the folks that have tracking enabled. But, you know, put your GIS thinking cap on here and just think about all the neat things that we can do with this in other parts of the system. So analysis that we can run, looking at different boundaries and seeing when we go into and out of different boundaries, et cetera, could be kind of cool. So I wanted to point that out before moving on. And I know I'm kind of getting up against it, so I'm going to just show this next part real quick. And then if we have time for questions, I'll do it. So I'm going to go back into a mobile app. Ooh, I don't know why it's showing food. That look good though. Okay. So I'm back in field maps, but this time I'm actually on my phone and I'm VPN'd into my organization's network, and I'm connected to my ArcGIS Enterprise. If you had a publicly available ArcGIS Enterprise, you could just hit it without having to VPN in. Ours is behind a firewall, so I'm VPN'd in. And I just want to point out, I'm going to go into this field maps editor map. You can see this one, I did actually create an offline area. I previously downloaded that to my device. And what I want to point out about this is this is, I think, a really neat workflow where I've configured this data set to be branch versioned, which is a newer type of versioning that we're offering within our system. It doesn't necessarily replace traditional versioning, but it does have unique use cases. And the biggest thing is that it works against web GIS services. So it works against web services. So when you configure branch versioning, you can actually configure it in a way so that when I decide to take a map offline, it'll actually create a new version for the person that took that map offline. So if I go out and edit, I can do my edits. And then when I sync my edits back up to the system, it's actually going to have a version that I can then reconcile and post up to default. So I'm just going to quickly show this because I know I'm running out of time, but I'm just going to put a point on the map. I'm going to put a storm well, and I definitely purposely put this in kind of like a blank space in the map. Active status, active. And for the sake of time, I'm just going to put my name and submit this. And then I'm going to go out and I'm going to sync this. So let's say I'm a field worker. I've been out in the field. I just did some edits. I just came back in. I sync my edits back up to the system. Now let's jump out here real quick. And this is the last thing I'll show. I'm going to be kind of the person back in the office, and I'm going to be viewing this data in ArcGIS Pro. And this is data that is in ArcGIS Enterprise. So this is enterprise geodatabase data. So the first thing I'm going to point out is this is that public art map that I showed, where I've got data that is actually in my staging enterprise geodatabase. It's shared with ArcGIS Enterprise. It's synced to ArcGIS Online through collaboration. And I actually see that the sync, which I have set up to run, I think every 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes, it will actually resync that service. You can actually see that this data is here now, and this is referencing a layer that is in my enterprise geodatabase. And then let's take a look at that branch versioning example. So this is data that is, again, it's in my enterprise geodatabase. It is set up for branch versioning. So there are some special considerations. And I'm going to change the version to this most recent version, which was the mobile version that I created and took offline. And I want to point out that you'll see this is that one that I just added. So if you go and look at the edit date, it's UTC time, so it's super funky, but you'll see that that was just added a couple of minutes ago. So, and then, you know, working with branch versioning, I would then, you know, kind of go into this management workflow and reconcile and post if I wanted to. So that was a lot, but I think that these are the kinds of workflows I know that the customers I work with are most interested in. It's like, how do we like really get the most out of field maps? How do we connect it to our enterprise data? How do we like get data into different locations? How do we kind of validate data as it goes into the system, those kinds of things. So hopefully this was useful to everybody. And I can maybe take some questions if we have time. I know we're kind of up against the hour.
There's nothing in the chat right now. If somebody has a question, you could just hop on, unmute yourself really quick and ask the question. We are all just, you know, befuddled by the fantastic presentation.
Thanks. I've been enjoying this stuff, so I definitely nerd out on it. And, you know, I guess that's one thing I'll say is like, if anybody is interested, my email's a little unusual for Esri. It's got an underscore in it, which is never cool in an email, but it's Joseph_Peters@esri.com. I put it in the chat window. I'm always happy to talk about this kind of stuff. I can walk through what I've set up and how I've done it if you want, or we can just trade emails if that's better for you. So always happy to talk.
Cool. Well, thanks, Joe. I appreciate the presentation, and I also kind of nerd out on field maps too. I think it's fun, and I love seeing where it's going, and I like seeing that there's more development happening on it, and it's just going to continue to improve, which is really helpful for my internal customers, because sometimes it's always one thing that they need that it doesn't offer. I'm like, just wait, maybe in 3 months I'll have it.
Yeah, I hate to say to bash on Collector, but I think we just ran up against some of the limitations of the libraries that Collector was built on. So a lot of the things that we wanted to do, and Field Maps is built on newer runtime library, and we've just got access to all the things that we wanted, we kind of have now, and it's exciting to see it built out. I agree.
That's awesome. Well, I want to thank everyone who came, and thank our presenters, Greg with UGRC and Joe with Esri. And just some announcements. We hope to have our next SLUG meeting, I think in April, since UGIC will be in May. And we'd love to hear from you if you're interested in presenting or know someone who want to present. It doesn't have to be too technical, just something you're working on. And something simple. It could be 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30, whatever. We're open to anything. And we hope you're getting all of our emails. They come out for job announcements and also these SLUG meeting announcements. But if you have any questions or comments or whatever, reach out to us. The email response goes to us. But yeah, I hope to see y'all at UGIC and see y'all again in April.